Welcome to High Sobriety. Our goal is to save lives and remove the stigma of addiction. Here's the host of High Sobriety, John Mabry.
Today we're talking with Gene Moser, and Gene, you have a very, very intimate personal connection with the circle of addiction, with the film that we're here talking about tonight, showing tonight. What brought you to this point where you're being interviewed on a podcast for High Sobriety that's going to be broadcast around the world? What brought you to this point to where you're speaking out on a topic that's very dear and personal to your heart?
Sure, it's very dear to my heart, and it's definitely not a circle that I had planned on ever joining. My oldest son, Adam, died of a fentanyl overdose in September of 2015. When the state trooper knocked on our door that evening to inform us that our son had died, we had no idea, number one, what fentanyl was, but that he was involved in drugs. He was 27. He lived on his own out in Portsmouth. We knew that he enjoyed drinking. We knew he enjoyed smoking pot. And I thought that was about the extent of it. And I had no idea that he was into drugs.
I think it's very common. I think it's very common out there that, me personally, when I was hooked on painkillers, nobody had any idea.
Right.
I don't look like a drug addict.
Right.
However, we have thousands and thousands of young people who are now, struggling with substance use disorder, and it doesn't look like it. It's catch people off guard, just like it did you.
Right. And so there is not a typical drug user. You read about that there's no longer the typical drug user.
I'm glad we're pointing that out, because it doesn't matter.
No.
It doesn't matter what your education level was or income level is. It doesn't matter.
That's absolutely correct. This kid was highly educated. He had a degree in actuarial science. That's a degree of forecasting risk for insurance companies. Okay? He knew. And I'm glad you brought up about the pain medication, because we asked ourselves in the days and weeks that followed, how did we miss this? How did we miss that our son had an addiction that nobody knew about? Well, that addiction started, sadly, in our own home, in our medicine cabinet. We had been very cavalier about storing our unused pain medications from my husband's and my previous surgeries. They were right in the kitchen cabinet with Tylenol and vitamin pills. Never giving it another thought, just ordinary stuff, put it in there, it'll be there next time we need it. And now it's extraordinary grief that we struggle with, and it's something that we live with every day of, why didn't we know? Well, the answer is, why didn't we know, is because we ourselves never received the education from the prescribing physicians that, hey, you're being prescribed an opiate. Yes, it will help you get through the next 24 to 48 hours after a hip replacement and maybe through early PT, but it comes with risks. We didn't know about those risks. Number one, I didn't know what an opioid was. And I had no idea that this little innocuous bottle was something that somebody could get addicted to and that euphoria would be the result. That wasn't my reaction to it, and therefore I didn't use the pills.
Nobody ever said the drug dealer could be you.
Right.
The drug dealer could be that extra medication in the house.
And that first time for so many kids and people, it's completely legal. It's right in your parents' medicine cabinet.
You're not going on the streets to get it. No. You're not having to go to some crack house and do something, super bad. You're just taking it from mom and dad real quick. I'm just going to do that real quick for a quick little fix.
Yep, a little weekend. And so what Adam he called it his hobby, but it was really an addiction. It was just his kind way of, and he probably didn't know it either. But he died with a Suboxone packet in his pocket. So he knew it was getting a little out of control. You know, he was buying pills on the street at that point because, you know, mom and pop's medicine cabinet, it ran out.
Ran out real quick, yeah.
He was buying them on the street. Well, those are expensive. And for whatever reason, we'll never know, he turned to fentanyl, dead 10 minutes later.
You know his fentanyl?
Yes.
He did?
Yes, he did, because he mentioned it to somebody. He came back to his apartment and he said, I just took the most powerful drug ever, fentanyl. And someone's like, I don't know what that is.
10 minutes later? So sorry.
Yeah.
So sorry.
Yeah. So, you know, he paid the ultimate price of taking something that he had no idea what the outcome was.
You're here to help be one voice of millions of voices that we need to come up and help.
That's absolutely. And this isn't about Jim and Jean Moser and their son Adam. You know, we are just one family that represents more than tens of thousands of families that lose a child every year.
Yep.
You know, I think the statistic is 174 people a day. You know?
So that's equivalent to a World Trade Center attack every 3 weeks, or a little bit more.
Yes.
Which equates to about 18 World Trade Center attacks this year.
Yeah.
I said that in the last interview. I want to say it again to put that picture in people's minds. If we had 18 World Trade Center attacks on our country this year, we would be doing a lot more to help alleviate the problem and keep Americans from dying.
Absolutely.
This is what we're in the middle of, and it's not going to happen overnight, but your voice and my voice help.
Right.
You know, every little bit counts, and so I applaud you for speaking out. And
thank you.
It took my parents years to really come out and talk about my brother's death, my brother's accidental death, and, but now we're proud to be voices.
Sure.
As you are now. Tell me about Zero Left.
Sure.
I think this is a very important topic, and I love the mission. Tell me about that.
It is. So, in the subsequent weeks after Adam's death, we were like, how can we let people know? You know, we became very vocal very early on because fentanyl was kind of new to the scene, at least in New Hampshire, I think, in 2015. It was heroin and then this. We wanted to just spread the word that, hey, don't do it, don't even think about it, don't take it to the next level.
Get help.
So, after my husband had hip replacement surgery 2 weeks after Adam died, and he had a conversation with the surgeon who prescribed him 150 pills and said, yeah, I'm not going to take all of these. Absolutely, there's a need in healthcare for pain medication. Absolutely. But let's try to change these prescribing protocols. I didn't need 150 pills, he tells the doctor. So protocols aren't going to change overnight, but what we can do is let's educate patients. Let's sit down with them before you even have the surgery. Let them know that you're going to be prescribed this. You need to take it with due caution. You need to lock it up while it's in your home, and you need to dispose of it properly. That's where Zero Left came from. Zero Left for the medicine cabinet. So what we say is take it if you need it. While you're taking it, make certain that you take it as prescribed. No more than what you need, certainly not with alcohol. Keep it out of the hands of everybody else. You know, even if you don't have children, you may have home health care coming in. You may have,
grandchildren come in.
Yeah, or contractors, whatever. You know, other people can come into your home. So let's lock it up. When you're done, let's get rid of it, where the Zero Left comes in. There are different products on the market. One of them is Datura, which we have no rights to it at all. I think the packets are made in the Midwest somewhere. But what it is, it's a biodegradable packet filled with charcoal.
Okay.
Charcoal. You put the pills, the unused pills, in with this deactivated charcoal. You add water, it bubbles up, you seal it. You can put the entire product in the trash. The entire thing is biodegradable.
What?
Right.
This is the first I've heard of that.
Right.
This is awesome.
So environmentalists are certainly for it because you're not tossing it into the landfill. You're not flushing it into our waterways.
Yes, don't flush it down the toilet or pour it down the sink.
No, and don't put it in the trash or put it in kitty litter. That's just dirty pills.
Get it, and it's going to end up in the landfill.
This totally neutralizes and deactivates the product. And so we just kept pushing and pushing this zero left. We speak to hospitals and anybody that will listen. We go around and speak to high schools. We made a documentary with the kids that were with our son the night he died. And we show this to them and we tell kids, maybe you're thinking you'd never do it, but he thought that too when he was sitting in your seat. So let's talk about it. Let's understand this and go home and tell your parents what you heard today.
Awesome. So what's a website that folks should go to? So
the website is zero-left.com. Very simple.
Okay. Zero-left.com?
Right. And
you wanted to give a couple shout outs?
Well, I would, because we can't do this on our own, and we were very fortunate that we caught the interest of Tufts Health Freedom and Delta Dental. They loved our Zero Left campaign to the point that they really jazzed up our website. They've really put funding into it. And we're also in partnership with Drug Free New Hampshire. We're on their website. Partnership for Drug Free New Hampshire, New Hampshire Hospital Association, and its subsidiary, New Hampshire Healthy Communities. They are now distributing 50,000 Datura packs to high schools, to community health service locations throughout the state. So that's a lot of wonderful support. There are drug take-back days now. So the whole idea is education, use it safely, lock it up, dispose of it
properly.
Absolutely.
Datura is spelled D-E-T-E-R-R-A. I'm sure you can go to their website and buy some of those packs.
Absolutely. And we all have a common cause, which is stopping addiction before it starts. We're all in this together. And so to be part of this is just, you can see the people out here gathering. It's a strong network. And, so many people out there have lost a loved one.
Yes. Well, Jean Moser, thank you so much for your time. It's been an honor having you here on High Sobriety.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
God bless you. Who do we got here?
Yeah, John Delina. Hey, thanks for having me. And I am the Associate Special Agent in charge of the Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, the New England Field Division. We cover all 6 New England states.
So, all right. So how long have you been in that position?
A long time. I've actually been 23 years with the DEA, and I've been here in New England for about 4 years now.
Okay, all right.
But I'm a local kid, Boston boy, born and raised in Revere, Mass.
Nice. So
yeah,
nice to be back here.
It is.
On your own stomping grounds.
It's you know what? It's great to be back here. But it's also I come here at a very critical time, which is really why I wanted to come back here. New England was being ravaged by this opioid crisis, and I'm a guy that wants to be able to help. So it was important for me to get back here. I've lost too many friends and people that I know to this thing, and although DEA is an enforcement agency and that's what we do, we're also really trying to encompass ourselves fully into the community, and that's what we've done so well here with Jim Wahlberg and the entire foundation.
Nice. So I can just imagine coming home to your to your old stomping grounds, and yet you are helping and you're here to help. But how does it feel you in your heart to see the devastation and to see it's almost like there's no end to it. It's almost like it just keeps getting worse.
Yeah,
So what is that like for you?
Well,
you lay your head down to bed at night.
You phrased that question so well. How's it feel in my heart? Because that's really where you feel it. It's a good news, bad news. The bad news up front is that New England has been hit so hard by this thing. When I was looking at it from the national level and I saw how bad this area was getting crushed, it's tough to see. The good news is the little silver lining is the response. What New England has done, how this community has come together. And when you look at events like you and I are sitting at right now in a place like Manchester, New Hampshire, how that community can come together in a response to the crisis, that's what it's all about. And it really is, it's all aspects. It's the enforcement world, which is so important to me personally. It's the recovery world, which is just so critical with what's going on. I mean, people need treatment, they need access to treatment, people need help to deal with this disease. And lastly, the third piece, which is very, very important to me, is the prevention and education module, which is why we're here. We're showing a film to educate the masses. We've been working with so many people, youth groups, kids, etc. And before I turn it back over to you, I just want to say one last thing about enforcement. Enforcement is critical because there are people that are out there that are profiting off of the death and misery of these drugs. These are people that don't care about the statistics. They don't care about the people that are trying to get into treatment and recovery. They don't care about the young kids that are learning about what's going on in their communities. All they care about is making money, and they're going to continue to pump this stuff into our communities. Those are the people that we're focused on stopping.
So in a follow-up to that, where's it coming from? Where do you see it coming from? I'm sure there's a lot of places, but
it is a lot of places.
Where's the most coming from?
Well, for this area here, we're dealing with fentanyl, and New England has been hit by fentanyl, unlike any other place in the country, I'll say.
Why is that?
I think the better question to ask, even before that, is, why New England in general? How did we get here when it comes to these drugs? And I think it's important when I talk to people that I explain to them that I am a Boston kid born and raised, that I'm a Revere guy. I'm not some guy from LA that's coming in here to tell people of Boston what's going wrong in their city. I will say that for the longest time, and I was born in 1970, there's been a very, very strong appetite for prescription opioids in this area. I think it's a blue-collar, hard-working town. I think doctors were prescribing a lot of medication to people, and that will to take those drugs has always been here. I think people almost looked at it as their right because they're working so hard. And what happened next is really why we're here today. It's the cartels at the highest level. The cartels have better research and development than any Fortune 500 company. They study trends, just like market research analysis people study the stock market. And they look at an area like New England that they knew had that appetite for the prescription opioids, and they knew that sooner or later there would be a drop-off, and they wanted to be there with that heroin ready to sell it to those people. They knew that when you have an appetite for prescription opioids, two things possibly happen. One is we enforce our way out of the problem, and people that are dealing with buying those pills off the street can't find them anymore. Or the second, which is probably the most likely, people run out of money and they can't afford to get those pills. And that's when that drug dealer preys upon their weakness. And he's sitting there saying, try this bag of heroin one time. It'll get you through, it'll get you through. And we know what happens once they try it that one time. So those cartels are smart. They had the product available, and they had themselves with placement and access. They were set up on the street corners, ready for that to happen. And if you talk to anybody in recovery or anybody dealing with addiction, and I know that's what you do all day long, they're all gonna tell you, they didn't say, I wanna be a heroin addict, I'm gonna be a fentanyl. No, they never, most of them will tell you they promised themselves to all that they believed in. They promised their mother, they promised God, they promised whomever that they were never gonna do it. But one day it got too strong and they gave in. And then they're in a much different world, right? So how did we get here? That's how we got here. How did we get to the fentanyl world? Well, the cartels, again, smarter than anybody else, have more money and time than anybody else, said, we can mass produce this stuff. We don't have to worry about opium anymore. We can mass produce this stuff in laboratories and sell it to those same people on the street that are buying it, and that's exactly what they've done.
So what next? Where do we go from here?
Well, it starts with a night like this. We're bringing a community together to educate and say, hey, we need to continue to talk about this. We need to continue to expand our enforcement efforts, our recovery efforts, and and our prevention and education efforts. If we bring those three things together, we'll be in a better position. But it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. It's a long-term solution to a problem that you and I are waking up to every day, and it's hitting us in the face. But we can't waver. We have to sow those seeds right now. We have to be committed to everything that we're doing right now, knowing that it's not going to be tomorrow. And guess what? The people that I work with and for, the parents that are out in this audience today, they want answers tonight. But the answer is be patient with us, be committed.
It's like cancer. I love making the connection of cancer and addiction. Cancer treatment and a cure for cancer doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
It is a marathon, and it takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of people running races together. Why aren't we doing pulling races together for addiction treatment? There's not enough of that out there. Which hopefully I'd love to see some more of that.
I continue to think about a song, sowing the seeds of love, and that's exactly what we're doing. We're sowing those seeds, which are so important. We're planting those seeds at a night like tonight, in hopes that 5 years from now, it's a better America. Hey, we're talking about 77,000 Americans potentially going to die of a drug overdose this year. That's way too much. We can't have that in this country. If you can lay your head down at night and think that's acceptable for the United States, then you're in the wrong place. We all need to do better. We have a lot of work to do.
Sure. And do you put a number to that? Put a visual to that? I'm just going off the top of my head. That's probably around 20 World Trade Center attacks in 1 year. Equivalent of 20 World Trade Center attacks due to overdoses.
And think about the effects that we all felt the morning of the World Trade Center attacks. Think about a state like New Hampshire that's averaging over the last couple of years close to 500 overdose deaths a year, in a state that averages about 12 homicides a year. We're only used to seeing 12 people, die at the hands of something else a year in a state like this, and now all of a sudden we're averaging 500 overdose deaths. Completely unacceptable. But again, in a state like New Hampshire, this is a bipartisan issue. The governor, the U.S. senators, everybody has rolled up their sleeves and said, I want to be part of the solution. That's what I'm most proud of here.
That's awesome.
And the other thing I'll tell you is, and I say this to any group that I'm talking to, the world as we know it will never be the same because of this current crisis. If you're a police officer, your job will never be the same. If you're a firefighter, your job will never be the same. If you're a teacher, your job will never be the same because of what we're dealing with. We never expected kids in the public school system in a place like Manchester to go to the school nurse every day with a sick stomach. There's kids that go to school every day, and by lunchtime they're going to see the school nurse with a sick stomach because they're so afraid to go home, because they're afraid of what they're going to see when they get there. That they have a mom, a dad, or somebody that's raising them that's dealing with this addiction, and children are so afraid to go home and find them possibly overdosed. That's frightening to me. It's unacceptable. So again, that's why I'm here. That's why I continue to work as hard as I do, because I'm so committed to it.
Thank you so much for your time, John. Really appreciate it.
It was nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. All right, John Mabry with High Sobriety Podcast. I'm here with Kathy Leonard. She's the mother of Jonathan Testa, who is, she's the, survivor. The mother of, she's surviving from somebody who has not survived through the Circle of Addiction. We're here talking about Circle of Addiction. We're at the premiere of Circle of Addiction, A Different Kind of Tears. And so in the title of the film, produced by Wall Street Productions, which is Jim Wahlberg is behind it, the title of the film is Circle of Addiction, A Different Kind of Tears. And so you being a mother of who's lost a son to this deadly disease, that's talking to you specifically, isn't it?
Yes.
It's a different kind of tears, correct?
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about what your life was like with Jonathan prior to his addiction getting hold of him.
Okay, yeah. Prior to his addiction, he is my only child. So we were very, very close with him growing up. And he was, not because he was mine, but he was a great kid. Very smart, very talented. Graduated high school in 2006 from the National Honor Society. And he was a very accomplished musician at that time. He was also very good at sports and art. Had a full scholarship to college for music. He had a lot of things going for him, and he could have done a lot of things and gone a lot of places. But his addiction kind of got in the way of that, and the story took a turn that I had never, ever expected that it was a place that either he or I would be.
So this is so many people's story. Thank you for speaking out about this. There's so many mothers out there that are still, or parents out there that still struggle letting other people know what's going on in the house. I know my parents struggled with it. How bad it's going to make them look bad.
Right.
What did they do wrong? What's the community going to think of us? We failed as a parent. All these things I'm sure went through your head.
Absolutely.
What was the turning point? So 2006, he graduates high school. He has a chance to go for full scholarship on music. What was the turning point?
Well, I think that in high school, unfortunately, like so many kids, he did dabble in smoking pot, underage drinking. I hate to say it, I didn't like it, but what kid doesn't? But the turning point, I think, came during his first year of college. It came to my attention after his first full year of college. When he came home for the summer, I noticed things were very, very different. His attitude, his friends, his behavior was just very different. And at first I thought maybe it was just, okay, he's been away from me for the better part of a year and he's independent. And then in September, he hadn't been back into starting his sophomore year for more than a week when he got into trouble for cocaine use. And that was a shock to me. I feel really ridiculous, but I had no idea. And he did get arrested, and things just spiraled out of control from that point. And that is when I felt like all the things that you said. I felt alone, I felt ridiculous, I felt like I was a bad parent, I was afraid to go to the grocery store because I was sure that everybody saw his name in the paper, thought I was a bad parent, because I was divorced. I thought, I kept questioning, what did I do wrong? Where did I go wrong? What didn't I see? Why didn't I know this was happening? You have all these questions and you doubt yourself. And you're afraid to talk to anybody about it because you're not expecting it. That part of it blindsided me. It really did.
Yeah. It's got to be lonely. It's got to be a terrible place to be.
Yeah,
it was. This major life situation happened with your only child.
Right.
And where did it go from there?
From there, unfortunately, it took 2 years for his court case to be settled. And during that time, I think his fears and his self-esteem really spiraled out of control. And during that time, I'm not sure exactly where it was. I want to say maybe a year into it, he started experimenting with heroin. And, that drug is really, really hard to get over. That grips you in horrible ways, and it just totally took his life in a whole other direction. Not that cocaine wasn't bad enough, but the heroin just really made things out of control. And then it was a vicious cycle of jail, came out, was clean, relapsed again, went into rehab, came out, relapsed again, got into trouble, served a little more jail time. So it was that vicious cycle. It was the jail, rehab, relapse, and on and on. And the last time that he went into rehab, I drove him to a rehab. He was clean and sober approximately 3 months, and he found another job, got a paycheck, and he got a paycheck that day. And that night, I think that was a trigger for him oftentimes, having money.
It's money, yeah.
Which is a trigger for so many people struggling with this disease. And I think from conversations I had with him, he would always say, I'm like, I don't understand, Jonathan, you've been clean and sober this long. Why put yourself through that pain? I don't understand how that works. And he'd say, addicts kind of have that attitude that we can do this one last time for old time's sake, and it's only going to be one time. But heroin is not typically a drug that works well with.
No.
And so he relapsed for his first and only time, and he passed away that night. So it was 2 days after my birthday, a week before Christmas, and it was not that there's ever a good time, but it was horrible. And I know that he was clean and sober because I saw him the day before. Actually, he had to go to court, and he was drug tested, and he was clean and sober. So.
Do you think that because he had been clean and sober, he used a similar amount
it could have been that because the medical examiner's report did not show any fentanyl, which I was sort of half expecting. It was heroin, and it could have been that was the case. I don't know, but we had many conversations when he was clear-headed, and we had that conversation actually the day before about him knowing people that had overdosed because they went back to using the same dose they did prior to getting clean. So he knew better, but that, the way it affects your brain, knowing better is not always what's first and foremost in your head when you get that drug in your hand and you just want to feel that feeling.
Yeah. You just want to escape for just a little bit, and it doesn't take much. And we're coming off the cusp here of Demi Lovato overdosing just yesterday. And I can only imagine, I don't know the details, I'm imagining she probably wasn't out doing it very long. If you have some sobriety time, I think she had a couple years, and it doesn't take very much that next go-around. I think you're coming, I could just imagine him coming into money, getting money. You get a batch bigger than you normally get when you're just scrounging for pennies when you're ongoing, when this has been ongoing for a while. You get a paycheck, you spend it, a handful of stuff. I'm going to have a party. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate
but
that.
I applaud you. This isn't something to cry and be sad about right here in this moment. I want to celebrate you. I want to celebrate your entire family. This doesn't just affect you. It affects your ex-husband. It affects cousins, the aunts, the uncles.
And that's what people don't realize. I have the loss of my son, but I also, and not just me, this is everybody everybody that's going to be in this theater tonight that's there with a picture of the child they've lost. It changes their lives forever too. Sadly, and not because it's all about me, but because so many of us in that room will be experiencing things like, I have friends that are raising grandchildren because they lost their child. I'm in the situation where I was at some point in my life looking forward to being a grandma and being able to spoil, my grandchildren rotten. I will never have the experience of having that first dance with my child at his wedding. I will never have the experience of having a grandchild to love. And, it's spiraled my life in another direction too. I do have to say that working with people like Jim Wahlberg and all of the wonderful people that I've met on this journey that I never thought I would be on has been fulfilling in that I've met some of the most fantastic people I've ever met in my life that really work hard for this cause.
Absolutely.
And that is a blessing for me, and that helps get me through.
Awesome. It's about connecting, about getting reconnected after tragedy. And for those of you listening to the High Sobriety podcast here, I encourage you, if you or somebody that is struggling, don't wait till after the tragedy to get connected. Get connected right now. A lot of times there's a theory that states, I've said it on my podcast a lot of times before, is that there's a theory of disconnection. When somebody is disconnected for some reason, they're more apt to become addicted to something. And so getting reconnected through treatment and ongoing help after treatment, 12-step work. What we have at Addiction Campuses is a balanced life program. It's a 12-month program where we stay connected with individuals who graduate from our programs through text messages, through online coaching
awesome.
calls. So we offer a long-term, it isn't a 30-day treatment doesn't treat somebody who's been struggling for 15 years or 4 years. It's an ongoing thing that we got to keep people connected after the tragedy. And
follow-up's important. That follow-up is important because I think that's one of the issues that I saw with my son and many other people going through treatment. They get out and then it's like, okay, world, what do I do? Without that follow-up and that support, they still struggle.
Absolutely. That's where Addiction Campuses is filling that gap in the treatment world with our Balanced Life program. That's a long-term 12-month aftercare program. And, you can go on to addictioncampuses.com to find out more about that. Again, I want to say, Kathy, Leonard, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right,
appreciate it. Take care.
We've got Kevin Chapman, otherwise known as Chappie, played the judge on the film Circle of Addiction, different kind of tears. So, thanks so much for being on High Sobriety, Kevin. What other projects have you worked on? Start off with that.
Well,
where have people seen you in the past?
You've probably seen me in the last 5 years as Detective Fusco on the CBS drama Person of Interest. You may have seen me on Rescue Me. I've done about 200 hours of TV and about 60 films. So in this part, I get recognized a lot for a series I had on Showtime called Brotherhood, Mystic River, Unstoppable at Denzel, Ladder 49. 49 at Travolta, and a
Awesome.
whole bunch of stuff.
So you've been around.
I have.
You're involved in this film on addiction, and you play a judge, and you're a standout in this project. How did you get involved in this? So you're doing major Hollywood stuff, and now you're doing this, which isn't major major Hollywood production.
I myself am a product of the streets of Dorchester, Massachusetts. Just like Jim Wahlberg and the Wahlberg family, we all kind of grew up in a blue-collar, struggling community. Jim and I have been friends for, about 25 years. And his last 4 projects, whenever he was shooting them, it just worked out. I was never available. I've been involved in the addiction community now for just a little over 27 years myself. So, I try to carry the message as best I can and to show people that there's hope. I became an actor at 37 years old because I was riddled with fear, and I was riddled with doubt, and I was riddled with all those things that addiction lays upon us, And once I was freed from the bondage of addiction, it gave me the ability to go out and pursue my dreams.
Go out, feel, and be present.
And went out, and I was in Los Angeles for 13 years with my wife and my 2 beautiful kids, and have had a great career and continue to have a great career. I have a new show that I will be getting underway in January for Showtime with it's called City on the Hill with Kevin Bacon and Jill Hennessy and Aldous Hodge and Jonathan Tucker, which will be a new series that will air sometimes in 2019 on the Showtime network. Life's been
all
great.
These things aren't possible if you don't get help, if you don't get help in your addictions. Tell us a little bit about your journey through addiction or alcoholism or whatever your drug of choice is. You said it's...
Well, I don't think it, first of all, addiction doesn't discriminate, I think if you talk to anyone that is afflicted with addiction, they always say, I will never do this. I will never drink during the week. And then it's, okay, I'll drink on Fridays, but I won't drink Monday through Thursday. And then it becomes, well, maybe I'll just drink Thursday and Friday, and Monday and Tuesday won't. And then next thing you know, you find yourself saying, I will drink only on days that end in Y. And that's the progression of addiction, I could tell crazy stories, funny stories, horrific stories, but it's not, for me, it's not about where I came from, it's about where I'm going. And once I was freed from the bondage, it's a daily reprieve. It's about living, and it's about my wife and my children, and it's about carrying the message. It's about trying to help another person who's trying to walk the same path as myself and many others. That's what it's about for me today.
Nice. So let me ask you this. So somebody that is in long-term recovery, let's bring it real close to home, real personal, real current. What's a recent situation that you have gone through in life or in work or in family that you overcame, and how'd you overcome it? Sometimes for me it's I've got to go to a meeting, or I need to talk to my therapist, or how do you handle tough situations today in today's in your world today?
I'm a lover of American history. One of the greatest quotes is by the great President Abraham Lincoln, and it goes like this: most men can face adversity, but a true test of a man's character is success. What does that mean? That means when I have clean clothes on my back and I have money in the bank and I have a nice car and I have, those are the times that I have to look at myself in the mirror and say, am I presenting the best Kevin as I possibly can today? Am I trying to be, am I honestly working towards being the best man? I'm human. It's peaks and valleys. But if I keep that in the forefront of my mind, I'm okay.
Is there anything you want to say that to audience of...
that there's hope, that you can do it. If I can do it, anyone can do into it. And if you're suffering from addiction and you think that you're down the rabbit hole and you don't think that there's no way out, believe me, there's a way out. You know, I'm a product of public housing and was homeless and all of those things. And you know what? I'm a long way from that today.
Nice. So, hey, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me, and I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Nice to meet you.
Hey, thanks, bro.
All right.
Appreciate it. All right, we are here with Lieutenant Brian O'Keefe. He's a Public Information Officer for Manchester, New Hampshire Police Department. Do you mind restating your name and title? In that?
Sure, Lieutenant Brian, Brian O'Keefe, O''Keefe. I'm the Public Information Officer at the Manchester Police Department.
Thank you so much for your time. Thanks so much for being here. I just want to ask, so you're on the front lines of this opioid epidemic, this fentanyl epidemic that we're in. I'd love to get your view. How bad is it here in New Hampshire?
Well, you know, I mean, it's bad everywhere throughout the country. I'd like to throw out that caveat. We do have an issue here in New Hampshire. The city has had an uptick in heroin-related incidents. Just prior to me coming here tonight, we had a person passed out in a car. I had to shut off my radio to come in here, but suspected drug overdose. I mean, it happens on a regular basis.
How many a day? Are you able to, is there an average kind of, how many calls are you getting a day for overdoses?
It's tough to state, but I think it's safe to say that just about every shift, every day, someone is dealing with an overdose call for service.
Okay. And just real quick, a little bit about yourself. What made you become an officer, and what made you want to get into the position that you're in? Because this is a very important role for somebody to be understand what's going on.
Absolutely.
On the force, and be able to relate to the public and relay what you guys are doing and where the holes are, what's working, what's not working. So I applaud you for your role. But how did you get here?
Well, I appreciate it. You know, my father was a policeman in Lowell, Mass. For over 34 years. It was kind of one of those things that I just decided to do. I started this job 22 and a half years ago. I never planned on becoming the public information officer. You know, I've run a boxing gym for this place. I ran the police athletic league. I've been a street sergeant, community policing officer. I've done a lot of different roles here, and this is certainly a rewarding one because not only do you get to see what goes on each and every day, you also have to educate yourself on the epidemic, such as the heroin epidemic.
Yes. So, can you say where is it coming from? Any idea? Is there?
You know, it's tough to state. It's coming in all over.
I'm not familiar with this area, so are there small ports that people are sneaking stuff in?
You know what it is? It comes in from all avenues, north and south. You know, we have issues with certain cities down in Massachusetts. There's kind of a little pipeline with a couple of cities down there. You know, some state is coming directly from Mexico. It's tough to state, but I will tell you, our Special Investigative Division, or our Special Enforcement Division, we have about 25 officers dedicated to just combating the epidemic, not just heroin, but meth, crack, cocaine, every drug that comes into the city. Our guys go out and find the people responsible for selling it, using it, and we go after them.
All right, so are you making progress, or is it just an ongoing battle to try to stay ahead of the dealers?
You know, I think we make progress every day, really. I mean, the SWAT team goes out and does a hit on average about once a week. You know, you shut someone down and maybe someone else opens up, but the key is you have to stay persistent in your battle against this epidemic, and our department's done a fantastic job with that.
Nice. Great job. From your point of view, what's working and what's not working?
Well, you know, in our city, like I stated earlier, we have our own Special Enforcement Division. So our guys go out each and every day and they combat this epidemic. Not only that, we have a great collaborative working relationship with the DEA, Special Agent in Charge John Delina, our Manchester Fire Department, Chief Dan Goonan. They started a program called Safe Stations, which is actually a beacon of hope for all throughout the country. And what Safe Stations does is anyone that is battling addiction, originally was set up for the city, but we soon realized they were coming in from all over, including neighboring states. They would get dropped off at any of the fire departments 24 hours a day. They said they wanted help. The fire department would do a quick, blood pressure test, and they'd go through a couple of vital signs, and then within 15, 20 minutes, they'd get them the help they need and try to get them into a rehabilitation center.
Dude, that's awesome.
Phenomenal program.
And what's that called again? Safe Station?
That's called the Safe Station, and now it's been implemented in several other cities in New Hampshire, and it really is becoming something of a national program.
Nice. Is that similar to Project Angel? Are you familiar with Project Angel? Well, no. So Project Angel is where you go and drop.
Right.
Somebody can go drop any drugs or paraphernalia.
Right. No, this is for someone.
Just for an individual.
An individual, because we realize that the recovery window is short. When someone says they want hope or help and they hit that rock bottom, there's a small window of opportunity where a loved one can get them to a rehab, and it's tough to get in a rehabilitation center. So by bringing them to the fire department, they would kind of nix a lot of the red tape and get them right in the door.
Brilliant. Yeah, because Project Angel is just, hey, I'm going to go drop off my drugs and get rid of them, and I'm not going to get caught. I'm going to go turn them in, and I'm not going to get arrested that day. But this is...
Phenomenal program.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Awesome. What have you guys found that you've tried that didn't work, that maybe somebody else listening to this, who's an officer in another city somewhere else in the United States, goes, hey, we're trying that too, and that didn't work for them?
You know, it's tough to say what we've tried and didn't work. Reality is you're always reinventing the wheel here. You know, going after the bad guys is what we do as police officers. So whether you're infiltrating someone that you think is dealing by use of undercover officers, or just going after them in other ways, saturating a particular drug-infested area with patrol or undercover guys, there's just multitude of things that we utilize as far as programs go. It's tough to say what has failed.
All right, excellent. Opioid epidemic's the big, topic of conversation. Right. What else in the area is a problem?
You know, any drug is a problem, whether it's alcohol, marijuana. You know, what I like to tell people is everybody has a light switch, and some of us can turn the light switch off. When you use alcohol, you can have one or two drinks, or those that think they're recreational marijuana users. Some people can turn the light switch off. Those that can't turn it off, like my brother who's been battling heroin addiction for the last 20 years, that light switch goes on for the first time and it stays on eternally. So I think any drug is a major problem, not just here, but everywhere. It's educate your kids at a young age. Show movies such as this, educate them, bring them to rehabs, let them see what drugs do firsthand, rather than wait until it's too late.
Excellent point. And I wanted to point that out specifically, that it doesn't matter what the addiction is.
Absolutely.
The media is talking about the opioid epidemic, but whether it's crack, meth, cigarettes,
absolutely,
food,
everything.
Some people are addicted to exercise or Amazon Prime. It doesn't matter what it is. If you're struggling with something, you can get help.
Absolutely.
And that's I think the main point that we want to get across is through this film, Circle of Addiction, a different kind of tiers here with the Wall Street Productions, is get help. Get help. If you're struggling with anything, life is too short to struggle.
It is.
You can't do it on your own.
You can't.
Look out here. We're sitting on the stage here prior to the premiere of Circle of Addiction in the movie theater, and we're looking out. There is a huge community here coming to support.
Absolutely.
There are pictures of mothers and families have pictures of their family members who have passed away that we and Officer O'Keefe are looking at. This is what it's about. It's about community. Me as a grateful person in recovery myself.
God bless you.
Can't do it alone.
Absolutely not.
So, listener out there, if you're struggling with something, reach out for help.
Reach out for help. The help's out there, and I will tell you, I want to give some accolades to Jimmy Wahlberg and Wall Street Productions for doing this. Last year they had a film similar to this, and they showed it in front of 6,000 youth in our city, and I can tell you, it was powerful. And the message, it hit home with a lot of kids that have a parent or a loved one that are battling addiction, and it's important. And God bless anyone that wants help. The help's there if you want it. Go get it.
Hey, and if you're struggling with something, you're not a bad person.
Absolutely not.
Just a person who has a sickness, an illness. The disease of addiction is a disease.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean you're a bad person, but you can't do it alone. So reach out for help. AddictionCampuses.com is also another resource if you're looking to get somebody into treatment right now and talk about any kind of addiction. Go to AddictionCampuses.com.
Thank you for doing this. I greatly appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Officer O'Keefe. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Right, God bless. All right, we have Michael Yebba.
Yes.
YEBBA here at the premiere of Circle of Addiction, A Different Kind of Tears. Not only is he the actor, the character that stood out to me the most in the film, as he is the drug dealer that injects a young female with drugs that ends up leading to her death, and you end up throwing her in the trash, and that's how her life ends.
Yes.
And it starts with you as the drug dealer in the drug house.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you're also a co-writer or writer?
Jim and I, this is, I think, our fourth film. We wrote it together, like the other movies that we have done. I directed the last one. Jim directed this one.
Okay.
So it's we both have, a lifetime of experience between our own struggles, and I grew up in Southie, he grew up in Dorchester, so this has been happening to us and our friends and family since the mid-90s.
So before we get into the most impactful scenes in the movie, again, in my opinion, tell me a little bit about your story.
I grew up in Southie. My side of drug addiction started at an early age from the selling side. I was a drug dealer.
Wow.
I started selling weed when I was 12, and I think I started selling coke when I was about 14. So back then in Southie, it was a lot different. I was sitting in the back of a bar called Conley's, on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night at 14 years old, and I remember people just giving their lives away to me, chains, radios, whatever had value to it, they gave, and it terrified me to ever try drugs because of that. At 15, I got an LTD, a Ford LTD, for an 8-ball of coke, and I pulled away from that when I went in the Marine Corps, try to change my life in a positive way. And when I did 4 years in the Marine Corps, I came out and I was a Boston firefighter for 5 years. And while I was a firefighter, not on duty, but on a vacation, I fell 30 feet off a roof and I shattered my left leg. And that is what introduced me to actually physically taking the drugs. I remember my prescriptions ran out after 2 surgeries in 3 months, and I was in agony. I didn't know what was going on, and I called up one of my friends and told him what was happening, and he said, you're kicking. I was like, I'm not kicking. I never did heroin. I did perks. He's like, dude, it's the same thing. And he said to me, do you have any OxyContin? Because I used to sell it. And I said, yeah. He said, take one, you'll feel fine. And I did, and unfortunately, about a year and a half later, I was in jail facing multiple counts of armed robbery. I was actually one of the responsible ones for robbing pharmacies in the 2000-2001 era. I robbed 36 pharmacies. Excuse me. And I got sent to jail. I was looking at life, and I accepted, while I was in jail, I accepted the fact that I was going to spend at least the next 15 years in jail, and I didn't want to do it getting high, because at that time I was still getting high in jail. And August 10th, 2002, I just got on my knees and prayed, and it's been going good ever since. I ended up doing some time, but not to the extent of what I thought. I got out, and my mission since then has been to try to help somebody or spread the word, and that's what we've been doing since. So
awesome, man! Thank you so much for sharing your story. Now, tell me about your scene, your character. How did it feel to play a character? You're playing a drug dealer, and you used to be a drug dealer, and you're sober now. And to go into that scene, the room. I love the setting of the room. It's just like this eerie, like Satan layer red color, and I feel like you're like the devil.
Yeah. Well, when I wrote it, I wasn't intended on playing that character. I actually wanted to play the Uncle Ray character. Because I wanted to do a little humor, because most of the roles I do play is like the bad guy, and occasionally I'll play a cop. But getting into it, it's just like you just kind of bring yourself back to that mentality, which is kind of easy. I made sure that when the incident occurs where I attacked the girl to scare her, I didn't want to take it to the next level, because I just didn't want to do that. So I made it seem like this is a scary guy who has accepted his light way of life, and he sees this young girl who, hey, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you a warning, and if you don't take it, then all right, here I am, I'll help you, and that's kind of the way I looked at it. It's like, he knows that she's young and innocent, but at the same time old enough to make her own decisions. So, and as far as the what happens afterwards with her overdosing, that's just survival mode. Unfortunately, it happens constantly, and I pick her up, throw her in the trash, discard her, because I want to protect my lair. I don't want that around. And it does. It happens all the time, and it's very sad. And they've even passed laws that when you call 911, that they won't, for an overdose, they won't send cops for an arrest. Because that's what everyone was afraid of in the past. Wow. So watching the scene the other night, it was pretty heart wrenching. Is
that the first time you've seen it?
Yes.
Really? All right.
Yeah.
Well, I saw it before you then. I saw it earlier premiere about a month ago.
Yeah. No, that was the first time I saw it, and it was pretty powerful. And the audience reaction to it, it was like, all right, we got the message across. So
yeah, absolutely. So to take this on a one last different turn here before we wrap up, what are your thoughts on laws being passed now to go ahead and convict and arrest drug dealers as murderers? In Tennessee, where we're based at Nashville, that's something that's been a hot topic. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not opposed of it, you know what I mean? But I think, my personal opinion, and having dealt with it for the last 20 years, I think it's all Band-Aids. I think that it's just to pacify people, to make people happy, but it's not really ever going to the root of the problem. Because, yes, you convict someone and they get life, someone's going to step up next to them and risk what they're going to risk to get that money, to get that, it's a very difficult topic. It's a very difficult scenario, but, hey, I'm not opposed of it if that's what it takes.
Yeah. All right. Any last words you'd like to share with our audience here?
I just hope that everyone enjoys the film, and we'll be continuing to make more.
All right. Hey, thanks so much, Michael.
Thank you.
All right. God bless. All right. So we have Steve Bauer. He is an actor in the film Circle of Addiction, and he played your character. Is it sponsor?
I'm the sponsor. Yeah.
You're playing the sponsor.
Yeah.
All right. So, Steve Bauer, what other films have you played in the past? TV shows, films. What do you have?
Many.
A few notable ones.
My first movie was Scarface, where I played the second lead, the co-star with Al Pacino. For the last 5 seasons, I've been on Ray Donovan on Showtime. I also am featured in a new show called Queen of the South. I was in Goliath also, the new season of Goliath with Billy Bob Thornton. I was featured in Breaking Bad and known for that. Nice. In a role called Don Eladio, and people know me for that. Plus a bunch of movies, Thief of Hearts. I did a movie called The Beast about Afghanistan, where I play an Afghan fighting the Russians off in 1980, the Russian invasion of Afghanistan.
Well, how did you get connected with this? So you played in all those. How did you get connected with Jim Wahlberg, with Wahlberg?
Well, because I developed a friendship with Jim. I don't know how exactly we met, but we just seemed to connect, and I offered myself to do anything I could to possibly help young people to avoid the misery that I lived through in my 30s, late, in the middle of my life. I'm happy to be 60 years old now, so I survived that. But when, like I said, I had a midlife crisis where I was just a culmination of just depression and failures, failed marriages, etc. No direction, and I found myself in a relationship where the other person was already a drug addict, and I sort of followed her in order to save her. I got hooked on heroin, and that took me on a 5-year ride that I almost didn't come back from, but I'm one of the fortunate ones because I don't, and I never did suffer the cravings and the call of the drug to go back. Once I got free of it, once my body was free of the addiction, and my mind was back on track of loving life and loving God and loving my family and my sons, my children, I never even considered going back, And I've been tempted, but I don't get tempted anymore. I just don't. I never did. Once I was free of it, I never was tempted to go back because it was such utter misery for me. And that's what I want to convey to people. If I can speak in front of young people and let them see, the proof that somebody like me who had early success and then just through a series of failures and things that disillusionment, with the world and with life and with relationships, also losing God, losing a sense of purpose in the world, a sense of purpose, a sense of connection with God. I found myself addicted to heroin, and it wouldn't let go, and my mind was messed up, so I didn't want to let it go, and it took a few times of rehabilitation, of rehab, until I finally got it. My third rehab, I think it was, I finally felt how great it was to be free of the physical addiction, and my mind was good, in a good space, and connected again with God, feeling like Jesus part of my life. I don't want to get religious, but that's my personal thing, is I always have Jesus with me. And it's something I didn't have when I was using.
And that's something that's so key for so many millions of people, and I'm not saying thousands or tens of thousands, I'm talking millions of people who have been able to enter a way of life that's considered recovery, whether it's through a 12-step program, whether it's through a church, whether it's through your boxing gym, or you pick up karate or taekwondo or something where they find a spiritual connection.
You find a spiritual connection.
And again, we won't get too religious on this, but I do want to just make a point, and I appreciate you bringing that up on the show, that millions of people find help in finding that spiritual connection, and that helps them sustain through temptations along
Absolutely.
the way. So now I want to jump into your character. So in the film,
it's very brief.
It is, but
John.
It's powerful, though.
He asked me to do one scene. It's one scene where the character played by his brother Robert Wahlberg has an experience where he gets there too. He's an EMT guy. He's the one who gets the call, and he gets there, and they're too late to save this girl. and she's ODing on too much heroin.
So we just interviewed Michael Yerba, and we just saw his character, the drug dealer who shoots her up. She overdoses in front of him. He throws her out in the trash.
Yep.
And he runs inside, closes the door. First responders come up, who you're talking about right now.
Yep.
Robert Wahlberg.
And Robert, when he gets to me, he's saying, dude, I can't do this anymore.
I just found a 17-year-old girl thrown in the trash like a piece of garbage.
And he's saying he can't handle it. He doesn't want to do it again.
Is he in recovery or not?
I don't know.
Are you his sponsor or what?
The character, yes, absolutely.
Okay, so
absolutely,
so
I'm his sponsor.
Yeah, you're talking after this.
Yeah, I'm talking to him from experience, and what I'm saying to him is, if you quit, then there may be then what's going to happen? That's one less person who's going to be there when the call comes in, and it's the fact that you're in recovery, the fact that you're no longer a slave, you're no longer in the problem, you're in the solution, that you can help others who are stuck. And if you can do your part, if you quit, then who's going to be there? You don't know that someone's going to be there for that girl or that boy that needs help, needs you to show up. And so go back out there, get your head on straight, and remember that you're one of the lucky ones, and you have a duty to pass it on. So as I do, I pass it on to him.
Exactly. So you and I, people in recovery, we're taught to, we got to give away what we've been given, or we can't keep it. Now, I think that's a lesson for everybody.
Absolutely.
Right? So if you're listening to this episode and you're listening to this conversation and you're not in recovery and you don't know any drug addicts or anything like that, you just came across high sobriety somehow, some way, you can hear it right here from Steve Bauer that just give it away. Just give love away.
Give love, man. Just pass it on, man. If you're feeling that you're one of the lucky ones, that maybe you don't have an addiction, just look out for your fellows, look out for your brothers and sisters, because there are people in trouble out there. You can count on that, because drugs are there. They're there. They're recreational now, and you've got to be available for those who don't know any better.
That's right. So all right, I think it's a great lesson for all of us.
Thanks, man.
To be reminded.
Thank you.
All right, talking with Steve Bauer. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, brother.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right,
pass it on.
Thank you for listening to High Sobriety. If you or a loved one are struggling with an addiction, we can help. Call our hotline at 844-888-HELP. That's 844-888-4357. Don't wait. Call today, 844-888-HELP. High Sobriety is an Addiction Campuses podcast.